Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start setting up our controls for our player character. We're going to start off a little bit easier with sprint. We'll go to crouch and then work our way up to interact. So to get started, again, control space to bring up our content browser. I'm going to go to my toolkit here, game info player. We're going to go ahead and go into player because that is a player system. We've got our actions. We've got jump, look, mouse move. We're going to right click here and create a new input action, IA underscore sprint. You can name it what you would like, but I like to be consistent with what we're already doing. We can go ahead and open this up and make sure our settings are default. Perfect. We can go ahead and save and then exit that. In our IMC default system here, what we're basically doing is going to tell our mappings for what our controls are, and we're going to use the new input action that we just made. Not shift, sorry, sprint, because I'm going to be using shift to sprint. So you can click this drop down here. We can go ahead and click the key value and do left shift. If you would like, you could do something completely different. That's fine. I prefer left shift because that's what I'm used to in the majority of games. We could hit this drop down arrow again and make sure everything's set up as default. Cool. We have our button for sprint already set up. Awesome. If you can, go ahead and go up to player actions and open up your BP first person character. And we're going to head over to the event graph. We have here our movement inputs, jumps, camera input, and then a few extra details about what is going on with the template character. So typically there is like some kind of gun or rifle that you could pick up, and that is the code related to this as far as like possession goes when the character picks up the gun, the possession there. All right. So let's go ahead and get our new sprint input actions. We're going to do IA sprint and get the enhanced action events. So what this is going to tell us is that when we press this button, we're going to go ahead and do something. So what we can do here is grab our movement speed. In order to do that, we're going to click on our character movement component. And if you type in here, speed, we can see that our max walk speed, crouched, fly speed, what we're looking for is our max walk speed. So the way the Unreal Engine typically works is we can grab this component, drag it out here, and search for what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and grab max walk speed. So when we press this button, we want to be able to set our max walk speed to a higher value. We don't need to get the current, we just need to set what we're doing. So just as an example, let's go ahead and plug it in here. If our default movement speed is 600, let's just for the sake of testing, call this 1200, right? Go in, test it out. We're walking, we're running, and sprint, we are going way faster. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and exit this out and keep on moving. So what happens is when we let go, if we can arrow down here, we want to set the max walk speed back to whatever our default is. So let's go ahead and oops, my control key is getting a little stuck. Control C, Control V, match up our component here. We'll set the max walk speed down to 600, and we're going to go ahead and connect this to completed, right? So let's go ahead and click here. We're walking, we're going fast. Now we're letting go and we're back to our normal speed. This is a very simple sprint setup. It's nothing crazy. You could leave it as is, but we're going to do some better programming practices here just for setting up kind of what we want, right? All right, so let's go ahead and set this up in a more modular way. Where we're going to basically take these and make them something called variables and something that we could adjust as needed, right? So instead of saying, okay, I want a hard-coded value of 1200 for this to be my sprint speed, I want to go ahead and drag this out, promote to a variable, and I want to call this, we'll call this one sprint speed, right? So now what we can do is press compile and save. And when we click on our variable down here for sprint speed, we can see what our sprint speed value is. This is something that we could set and adjust as needed. We could set up code to where if you pick up a power up, if you wanted to, we can adjust what this value is, and it'll update with our sprint function here as well. What we also need to get is this value here and set up, you guessed it, our default run speed. This one's not too bad. We can go ahead and do this and leave it like this. So now if we go ahead and test it, it should function exactly the same. Yep. Except now we have a little bit more control over what we could do and what we can access, right? And there is something that I want to do here. Maybe that's just a little bit different. Maybe something a little bit more unique and a little bit more complex. So instead of sprint speed, let's actually call this sprint, oh my goodness, multiplier, right? And instead of a default value of 1200, why don't we just double our default walk speed? So let's change this up a little bit. And let's get this out of the way. We'll plug this back in 1 second. But what if we took our default run speed and we went ahead and multiplied our default run speed by our sprint multiplier? So now I can go ahead and have a separate power up that says, hey, instead of double your run speed, we're going to do 1.5. We're going to do 3 times. We can kind of adjust things here. And that's one less variable that we really need to manage and take a look at, right? So if we notice here, we'll still have the same functionality of sprinting and walking, sprinting and walking. And then what we are going to do here is just kind of clean up this code. Something really, really, really important to do is to constantly be cleaning up your code because your teammates will love you for it. And if you plan on working solo forever, you will love yourself in the future because when you inevitably have to go back and find something that you broke, because we're going to be breaking things all the time because that's what we do, you're not going to be mad. What I'm doing here is just really quick. What you could do is click out here or drag or double click and do a reroute node. A reroute will allow you to kind of move these pieces around to organize things a little bit better. And then what I did to line them up is if you select 2 points, your reroute in this, and press Q, we'll go ahead and level them out for you. So you don't have to worry about that all that much. So I do see a little bit of redundancy here. I have default run speed, default run speed. I can go ahead and get rid of this one and drag this one right there. So look at that. We are nice and clean. Let's go ahead and highlight all of these, press the C key for comment, and we're going to call this sprint. Now our sprint is done. It's set up, it's good to go, and this is not a default mechanic that came with the template or the engine. So what I'm going to do is come over here on the right hand side to the comment color, and I'm going to go ahead and green this out. I'm going to zero out the red and the blue, and I'm going to keep the alpha at 0.5. So what this is telling me is that I am done with the sprint mechanic. We are all set. We don't need to adjust this. Let's go ahead and compile and save. We could go ahead and just test it one more time for good measure, and congrats, we're sprinting. Okay, now the sprint is done, let's go ahead and set up our crouch. The first thing we're going to have to do is move our first person camera that was a child of this first person mesh. We're going to click and drag that first person camera onto this capsule component. That'll make it a child. Essentially what we're doing here is when we press the crouch button, we need to make sure that the camera is actually moving along with the capsule because that's what's controlling it versus stuck on the skeleton. In case you didn't know, these are the meshes, right? So instead of being directly attached to that, we are now attaching to the capsule, which is what we'll control our crouch for. Second thing we need to do is if we click on our BP first person here and we type in crouch, we need to make sure that can crouch is enabled. Very important. Next thing we need to do is set up our input actions. So let's go ahead and control space, go to our player, actions, right click, input, input action, IA, crouch. We'll go ahead and open this up really quick and make sure that we are good to go. Looks good. And IMC default, let's go ahead and add our mapping like we did with sprint, but this time we're going with crouch. Awesome. Same thing, we're going to go ahead and click our key value. I'm going to pick left control. You can pick whatever you want. It's your game. But I would recommend picking something that at least makes a little bit of sense or that you've seen in other games like control or C. You don't want to confuse our player with unfamiliar with controls, right? All right, let's go ahead and add our input action. Go ahead and do IA underscore crouch. Grab the enhanced action events, not the values. Go ahead and drop this down. So essentially what we need to say is that if we are already crouching and we press the crouch button, we need to stand up. If we are not crouching when we press the crouch button, we need to go ahead and crouch. There are two built-in functions that do this for us already. We have uncrouch, and then we also have, you guessed it, crouch. So in order to get this to work, we're going to have to add a new variable. Let's go ahead and down here and click variables. We're going to go ahead and call this one is crouching. We're going to keep it type Boolean. In case you don't know what a Boolean is, it's essentially a yes or no answer, true or false. Let's go ahead and click and compile and save and make sure that the default value is false because we're not starting off crouched. So how do we get the logic to say, hey, if do this, if not do something else? Very easy with a branch. You're going to hold down the B key and left click. Alternatively, you could type in branch and get one that way. Same exact thing. So what this is doing, as soon as we hit start here, press Q again. If we are crouching, we need to uncrouch. And if we are not crouching, we need to crouch. And then our condition is the variable. Let's go ahead and drag this underneath. The last thing we need to do is update what our variable is after we do this action. So if I click on crouching and I hold down the Alt key, this is a shortcut to grab set. Alternatively, if I grab the variable and held down the control key, it's get. Set is something that we can actually adjust the value to. Getting is getting whatever the current value is, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and grab our set, Control C, Control V, and our set again. The top one will be false, the bottom one will be true. We'll press compile and save and make sure that we could crouch. Awesome. Just explain this logic really quick. When we press this button, we are checking if is crouching is true or false. If it is true, we are going to uncrouch our character and then set that variable to no, we are no longer crouching. Vice versa, if we go, hey, we are not currently crouching, great. We're going to go ahead and crouch and then set that variable to is crouching. Let's go ahead and highlight this, comment it out. We'll call it crouch. We'll move it up here. You don't have to color coordinate your comments. You can. Just makes things a little bit more legible. Up to you. That's fine. And that there is crouch.